The emergency beacon cut through the silence of deep space like a knife through darkness. Captain Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display floating above her command console, her dark eyes reflecting the pulsing red light that filled the bridge of the UES Determination. Unknown alien vessel in distress. Sector 77 Alpha, reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. Signal is weak but consistent. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Sarah leaned forward in her captain's chair, studying the readouts. In her 15 years of deep space exploration, she had encountered only 3 alien species, and none had been particularly friendly. The galaxy was a dangerous place, filled with territorial empires and aggressive civilizations that saw humanity as either a threat or a resource to be exploited. "Can you decode their message?" she asked. Torres worked furiously at his console, running the alien transmission through every translation protocol in their database. After several tense minutes, his face brightened. "Got it, Captain. It's crude, but they're speaking in broken standard English. Listen to this." The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a desperate voice filled the air. The words were stilted and pronunciation was off, but the message was clear enough to understand. "Please, anyone who receives this transmission, we are the Kithera. Our world is dying. Our enemies have found us after many cycles of hiding. They bring ships that burn worlds and enslave populations. We have no weapons that can stop them. We ask for shelter. We ask for sanctuary. We offer everything we have in return. Please, if there are kind hearts among the stars, help us." The transmission repeated, the alien voice growing weaker with each repetition. Sarah felt something twist in her chest. She had heard desperation before, but there was something different about this plea. It reminded her of the stories her grandmother used to tell about the early days of human space exploration, when Earth itself had been threatened by the Zarathi invasion. "Where's the signal coming from?" she asked. "Approximately 12 light years from here, Captain. A system we haven't explored yet. According to our star charts, it has 7 planets, 3 of which are in the habitable zone." Sarah stood up and walked to the main view screen, staring out at the field of stars that stretched endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there, an entire species was crying out for help. The smart thing to do would be to forward the message to Earth Command and let them decide how to respond. That was protocol. That was safe. But Sarah had not spent half her life in space to play it safe. "Set course for the source of the transmission," she ordered. "Maximum warp." "Captain." Her first officer, Commander Brooks, stepped forward with concern written across his weathered face. "We don't know anything about this species or their enemies. This could be a trap." Sarah turned to face him. "It could be. But what if it's not? What if there's an entire civilization out there that needs our help, and we turn our backs on them because we're afraid?" "Earth Command should be informed," Brooks insisted. "This is a first contact situation with potential military implications." "You're right," Sarah agreed. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've received a distress call and are investigating. Include all the data we've gathered so far. And if they order us to withdraw?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now there are people out there who need help, and we're the only ones close enough to provide it." The next several hours passed in tense preparation. The crew ran diagnostics on all systems, checked weapons and shields, and prepared for whatever they might find when they dropped out of warp. Sarah spent most of her time in her ready room, studying every piece of data they had about the unknown system and trying to formulate a plan. When they finally arrived at the edge of the system, what they found was worse than any of them had imagined. The third planet from the star was beautiful, covered in blue oceans and green continents that reminded Sarah of Earth. But surrounding it was a massive fleet of dark, angular ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Even from their position at the edge of the system, the sensors could detect weapon signatures that dwarfed anything in the human arsenal. "My God," whispered Torres. "There must be over 1,000 ships out there." "Captain," called out Ensign Martinez from the science station, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups on several of the larger vessels. It looks like they're preparing to bombard the planet's surface." Sarah gripped the arms of her command chair. They were too late. Even if they had brought the entire Earth fleet with them, they would be hopelessly outnumbered against a force this size. But as she watched the enemy fleet position itself for planetary bombardment, she realized that sometimes being outnumbered didn't matter. Sometimes all that mattered was doing the right thing. Open a channel to Earth Command, she ordered. Emergency priority. Within minutes, the familiar face of Admiral Harrison appeared on the main screen. His expression grew increasingly grim as Sarah quickly explained the situation. Captain Chen, you are ordered to withdraw immediately and return to Earth for debriefing, he said without hesitation. Sir, there are millions of innocent lives at stake here. We can't just abandon them. You have your orders, Captain. One ship cannot make a difference against a force that size. Sarah took a deep breath. With respect, sir, you're wrong. One ship might not be able to save them, but one ship can make sure their call for help reaches the right people. She looked directly into the camera, her voice steady and determined. Admiral, I'm formally requesting emergency authorization to issue a humanitarian aid request on behalf of the Kythera species. They've asked for shelter, and I believe we have a moral obligation to provide it. Admiral Harrison's eyes widened slightly. He understood what she was really asking for. A humanitarian aid request would bypass normal diplomatic channels and military protocols. It would go directly to the Colonial Emergency Response Board, which had the authority to mobilize civilian and military resources for refugee assistance and disaster relief. Captain, are you absolutely certain about this? Sarah looked at the view screen showing the enemy fleet preparing to destroy an entire world. Yes, sir. I am. Very well. Request approved. Good luck, Captain. The transmission ended and Sarah turned to her crew. Every face on the bridge was watching her, waiting to see what impossible thing she would ask them to do next. Set course for the planet, she ordered. And prepare to send a message to our new friends down there.
Tell them that help is coming.
The response from the planet came faster than Sarah had expected. The Kythera voice that crackled through the communication system was different from the first one they had heard. But the desperation was the same. Human vessel. This is Elder HFY of the Kythera Council. We detected your ship entering our system. Please, you must flee before the Devourers notice you. They have weapons that can destroy entire fleets. Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station. Captain, I'm picking up movement from the enemy fleet. 3 of their ships are breaking off and heading in our direction. Sarah studied the tactical display. The approaching ships were smaller than the massive dreadnoughts positioned around the planet, but each one was still twice the size of the Determination. Their dark hulls seemed to ripple with some kind of energy field that made them difficult to track on sensors. Time to intercept? She asked. 18 minutes at their current speed, reported Ensign Martinez. Sarah opened a channel to the planet. Elder HFY, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Determination. We received your distress call and help is on the way. But first, I need to know everything you can tell me about these Devourers. There was a long pause before the alien responded. Captain Chen, your species is unknown to us, but your courage honors you. The Devourers are an ancient evil that has consumed dozens of worlds. They do not negotiate, they do not show mercy, and they do not stop until everything that lives is either dead or enslaved. Our weapons are useless against their shields, and our ships cannot match their speed. How long have they been hunting you? 3 cycles. What you might call years. We fled our original homeworld when they first appeared in our space. We thought we had found safety here, but they tracked us across the galaxy. There is nowhere left to run. Sarah felt her hands clench into fists. She had heard this story before. In the historical archives of Earth's own dark period, the Zerathi had hunted humans across 3 star systems before they were finally stopped, and only then because other species had joined the fight. Elder HFY, can you tell me how many of your people are on the planet? Nearly 4 million souls, Captain. Men, women, and children who have already lost everything once. They deserve better than to die in fear. The tactical display chimed as the 3 Devourer ships entered weapon range. Sarah watched as energy readings spiked across her sensors, and then streams of crimson light lanced out toward the Determination. Evasive maneuvers, she ordered. The ship bucked and rolled as Commander Brooks took manual control, threading between the energy beams with skills honed by decades of combat experience. But even as they dodged the first volley, Sarah could see more Devourer ships turning their attention toward the small human vessel. Return fire, she commanded. Target their weapon systems. The Determination's pulse cannons opened up, sending blue-white bolts of energy toward the nearest Devourer ship. The beam struck some kind of energy barrier and dissipated harmlessly, not even leaving a mark on the alien hull. No effect, Captain, reported the weapons officer. Their shields are absorbing everything we throw at them. Sarah gritted her teeth as another volley of enemy fire forced them into a steep dive. They were fast and maneuverable, but they couldn't keep this up forever. The Devourers were systematically cutting off their escape routes, herding them like prey. "Captain," Torres called out excitedly, "I'm receiving a transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Harrison." The Admiral's face appeared on a secondary screen, and Sarah could see other figures moving around behind him in what looked like the Emergency Command Center, deep beneath Earth Command Headquarters. "Captain Chen, we've received your humanitarian aid request and it's been approved at the highest levels, but I need you to understand what you've set in motion." "Sir?" "The Colonial Emergency Response Board has classified this as a Priority Alpha refugee crisis. They're mobilizing every available resource, the construction fleets from the Mars shipyards, the mining consortiums from the asteroid belt, and 3 full battle groups from the 5th Fleet." Sarah's eyes widened. That was nearly a third of Earth's entire military and industrial capacity. "Admiral, with respect, they're sending ships to fight a battle, not to provide shelter." Harrison's expression grew grim. "Captain, you said these people asked for shelter." "Well, that's exactly what they're going to get. The Emergency Board has authorized the immediate construction of a refugee habitat, capable of housing 10 million beings. They're also sending the 1st Colonial Guard Regiment and Admiral Rodriguez's task force to provide security." The ship shuddered as another enemy blast came uncomfortably close. Sarah had to grip her chair to keep from being thrown to the floor. "How long until they arrive?" she asked. "The advance elements will be there in 6 hours. The main construction fleet will arrive in 12 hours. "But Captain, you need to keep those people alive until we get there." Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Devourer fleet was already beginning to position itself for orbital bombardment. Energy readings from their largest ship suggested they would begin firing within the hour. "Understood, Admiral. We'll buy you the time you need." The transmission ended and Sarah turned to address her crew. Every face on the bridge was watching her with a mixture of fear and determination that she had seen before in combat veterans who knew they were about to face impossible odds. "You heard the Admiral," she said. "Help is coming, but we need to keep the Cathara alive until it gets here. That means we need to convince a fleet of alien warships to delay their planetary bombardment for 12 hours. "Captain," Commander Brooks said quietly, "how exactly do we do that?" Sarah smiled grimly. "We give them something more interesting to shoot at." She opened a channel to the entire Devourer fleet, broadcasting on every frequency their communication system could generate. "Attention, Devourer fleet. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Determination. I hereby claim these people under the protection of the Terran Colonial Alliance. If you want them, you'll have to go through us first." The response came immediately. A voice like grinding metal filled the bridge, speaking in heavily accented but understandable English. "Human vessel, you are insignificant. Your ship is small and your weapons are weak. Remove yourself from the system or be destroyed." "I don't think so," Sarah replied. "See? The thing about humans is that we don't back down from bullies, and we definitely don't abandon people who need our help." She cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. "Load all torpedo tubes and prepare for full attack pattern Delta. If we're going to dance with these devils, let's make it a dance they'll remember." The Determination banked hard to starboard as Sarah prepared to take on an entire alien fleet with nothing but courage, determination, and the certain knowledge that sometimes the smallest ships could cast the longest shadows. The battle that followed was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. The Determination danced through space like a leaf in a hurricane, weaving between energy beams that could have vaporized a small moon. The Devourer ships were massive and heavily armed, but they moved like sluggish giants compared to the nimble human vessel. "Target the sensor arrays on the lead ship," Sarah ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "If we can blind them, we can buy more time." The ship's pulse cannons focused their fire on a cluster of antenna-like structures protruding from the nearest Devourer vessel. While their shields absorbed the direct hits, the concentrated bombardment seemed to cause some kind of interference. The massive ship's movements became erratic and its return fire grew less accurate. "It's working, Captain," reported the weapons officer. "Their targeting systems are having trouble locking onto us." But even as they celebrated this small victory, Sarah could see the larger picture developing on the tactical display. More Devourer ships were converging on their position, and the main fleet was still preparing for planetary bombardment. They might be able to confuse a few ships, but they couldn't stop an entire armada. That's when the first miracle happened. "Captain," Torres called out from the communication station. "I'm receiving a transmission from the planet. It's not from the Kythera." Sarah frowned. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was different from any they had heard before. It was deeper, more resonant, and spoke with an accent that Sarah couldn't place. "Human ship. This is Commander Thacklon of the Kythera Defense Force. We have been watching your battle, and we are impressed. We thought our military was completely destroyed, but some of our people survived in hidden bunkers. We are uploading tactical data about Devourer weaknesses to your ship now." Ensign Martinez looked up from the science station with excitement. "Captain, the data they're sending shows weak points in the Devourer shield harmonics. If we adjust our weapon frequencies to match these specifications, we might actually be able to penetrate their defenses." Sarah felt hope surge through her chest. "Do it, and send our thanks to Commander Thacklon." The next few minutes transformed the battle entirely. With the new frequency settings, the Determination's weapons began finding their mark. Blue energy bolts punched through Devourer shields and carved deep gouges in their dark halls. The aliens, who had seemed invincible moments before, suddenly found themselves taking real damage from the small human ship. But the Devourers were quick to adapt. As their ships took damage, they began coordinating their attacks more effectively. The 3 vessels that had originally pursued the Determination were joined by 6 more, and their combined firepower created a web of deadly energy that was becoming impossible to avoid. "Shields down to 30%, reported the engineering officer. "We can't take much more of this." That's when the second miracle happened. "Captain," Torres shouted over the sound of alarms. "Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. It's the advance elements from Earth." Sarah's heart leaped as she watched the tactical display populate with friendly contacts. 3 sleek destroyers materialized at the edge of the system, their hulls gleaming silver against the darkness of space. But what caught her attention even more were the other ships accompanying them. "Those aren't military vessels," Commander Brooks observed, studying the sensor readings. He was right. Mixed in with the destroyers were ships Sarah had never seen before. They were massive, blocky vessels that looked more like flying factories than warships. Their hulls bristled with strange equipment and massive cargo bays that could hold entire city blocks. "Incoming transmission from the lead destroyer," Torres reported. The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to a woman Sarah didn't recognize, but the insignia on her uniform marked her as a commander in the Earth Colonial Guard. "Captain Chen, this is Commander Rodriguez aboard the ECS Defiant. We received your tactical reports, and I have to say, your timing is perfect. We brought some friends who are very eager to get to work." "Commander, what exactly did you bring with you?" Rodriguez smiled. "Builders, Captain. The best construction crews in human space, along with their equipment. The Emergency Response Board wasn't kidding when they said they wanted to provide shelter for these people." As if summoned by her words, the massive construction ships began launching smaller vessels that streaked toward the planet below. Sarah watched in amazement as the fleet of builders ignored the ongoing battle completely, focusing entirely on their mission of creating a safe haven for the Kythera refugees. But the Devourers were not about to let this happen without a fight. The alien fleet began turning away from their planned bombardment positions, moving to intercept the construction ships. "All ships, this is Rodriguez. The builders are defenseless while they work. Our job is to keep those ugly alien ships away from them. Determination, you've done amazing work so far. Think you can keep it up a little longer?" Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were exhausted, battered, and running on pure adrenaline, but every one of them was ready to continue the fight. "Count us in, Commander. We've come this far together." The battle that followed would later be called the Miracle of Kythera Prime. 4 human ships faced off against a fleet of over 1,000 alien vessels, not to destroy them, but simply to delay them long enough for the construction crews to complete their work. The destroyers used their superior speed and maneuverability to dart in and out of the Devourer formation, striking at key targets and then retreating before the enemy could respond effectively. Meanwhile, the Determination continued to use its knowledge of Devourer weaknesses to maximum advantage, crippling ships much larger than itself with precisely targeted strikes. But it was what was happening on the planet below that truly amazed everyone involved. Using technology that defied conventional understanding, the human construction teams were building not just a refugee camp, but an entire city. Massive fabricators descended from orbit and began assembling structures that rose from the ground like metal flowers blooming in fast motion. "Captain," reported the science officer, "the construction rate is incredible. They're building living spaces for thousands of people every hour. At this rate, they'll have accommodations for the entire Kythera population within 6 hours." Sarah watched the progress reports with growing amazement. This wasn't just military efficiency or advanced technology at work. This was something uniquely human. The drive to help others even at great cost to themselves. "Incoming transmission from the planet," Torres announced. "It's Elder Zephi." The Kythera leader's voice was filled with something Sarah had never heard from him before. "Hope. Captain Chen, we are watching your people work, and we do not understand. These ships, these builders, they are not soldiers. Why would they risk themselves for strangers?" Sarah looked out at the battle raging around them, at the construction ships working under fire to build homes for people they had never met, and at her own crew fighting desperately to protect both the builders and the Kythera. "Because that's what we do," she said simply. "When someone asks for shelter, we don't just send soldiers. We send builders to construct it, defenders to protect it, and if necessary, we send people willing to die for it. That's what it means to be human." The third miracle came 6 hours into the construction project, just as the Devourer fleet was beginning to overwhelm the small human defensive force. Sarah watched her tactical display with growing concern as enemy ships pushed closer to the planet's atmosphere, their massive weapons charging for a final bombardment that would destroy everything the construction crews had built. "Captain," Torres called out urgently, "massive hyperspace signatures detected. Something big is coming through." The space around Kythera Prime suddenly erupted with new arrivals. But these weren't the sleek warships Sarah had expected. Instead, the main human fleet that emerged from hyperspace looked like a flying city that had been stretched across dozens of vessels. At the center of the formation was a ship so large it defied comprehension. The UES Haven was technically classified as a mobile construction platform, but it was larger than most space stations. Its hull was covered with manufacturing bays, fabrication units, and massive cargo pods that could hold entire populations. Surrounding the Haven were dozens of support vessels, each one specialized for a different aspect of large-scale construction and refugee support. Hospital ships with medical facilities that could treat millions, agricultural vessels carrying enough food production equipment to feed entire worlds, and engineering ships loaded with the materials needed to build not just temporary shelters, but permanent cities. But what made Sarah's heart race was what else accompanied the construction fleet. 3 full battle groups of the Earth Navy, led by the massive dreadnought UES Indomitable, emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. These weren't explorers or patrol ships. They were the heavy hitters of human military might, vessels designed to face down entire enemy fleets. "Incoming transmission from the Indomitable," Torres reported. "It's Admiral Rodriguez himself." The weathered face of Earth's most decorated fleet commander appeared on the main screen. Sarah had seen Admiral Rodriguez only in historical recordings, but his reputation preceded him. He was the man who had broken the Zarathi siege of Alpha Centauri and led the counterattack that had finally ended that war. "Captain Chen, I understand we have some uninvited guests who are making trouble for our new friends." "Yes, sir. The Devourer fleet has over 1,000 ships and they're not backing down." Rodriguez studied the tactical data that was being transmitted to his ship. "I see. Well, Captain, it looks like you and your crew have been holding the line admirably. Time for the professionals to take over." As the Admiral spoke, Sarah watched the human fleet deploy with military precision that was beautiful to behold. The battle groups spread out in a defensive screen around the planet, while the construction vessels moved into position to begin the next phase of their work. But it was what happened next that truly demonstrated the scope of human ambition. The UES Haven positioned itself in high orbit and began launching thousands of construction pods toward the planet's surface. But these weren't building temporary refugee camps anymore. The pods carried the components for something much more ambitious, a complete orbital ring habitat that would encircle the entire planet. "Admiral," Sarah said in amazement, "are they building what I think they're building?" Rodriguez smiled grimly. "The Emergency Response Board doesn't do anything halfway, Captain. If these people need shelter, they're going to get the best shelter human technology can provide. By the time we're finished here, Kythera Prime will have living space for 50 million beings, and the infrastructure to support a thriving civilization. The scope of the project was staggering. Sarah watched as massive construction frameworks began extending from the orbital platforms, reaching out to connect with similar structures being built on the other side of the planet. The ring would provide not just living space but parks, schools, hospitals, and everything else needed for a complete society. But the Devourers were not going to let this happen without a fight. As the human construction efforts intensified, the alien fleet began coordinating for a massive assault that would overwhelm even the reinforced human defenses. Captain Chen, Admiral Rodriguez said, his expression growing serious. The Devourers are massing for an all-out attack. Our intelligence suggests they're going to try to ram their largest ships directly into the orbital construction platforms. We need every available vessel to help with the defense. Sarah felt a surge of pride as she realized what the Admiral was asking. The Determination was the smallest ship in the human fleet, but they wanted her to stand alongside the mighty dreadnoughts and battle cruisers in the final confrontation. You can count on us, Admiral. We didn't come this far to give up now. The battle that followed would be remembered as one of the greatest fleet actions in human history. The Devourers attacked with the fury of a species that had never been denied their prey, sending wave after wave of ships against the human defensive lines. Their massive vessels shrugged off torpedo strikes that could cripple normal ships, and their energy weapons carved through space like the claws of angry gods. But the humans fought with something the Devourers had never encountered before: the absolute certainty that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. Every human ship that fell took down multiple enemy vessels, and when their weapons failed, some crews rammed their ships directly into Devourer hulls, sacrificing themselves to protect the construction efforts below. The turning point came when the Cathera themselves joined the battle. Commander Thaklan led a squadron of hidden defense ships that had survived the initial invasion, using their knowledge of Devourer weaknesses to strike at precisely the right moments. The aliens, who had seemed helpless just hours before, proved to be capable warriors when given the tools and opportunity to fight back. "Captain," reported the weapons officer aboard the Determination, "the enemy flagship is breaking through the defensive line. It's heading straight for the main construction platform." Sarah looked at the tactical display and saw a Devourer dreadnought larger than any ship she had ever seen, bearing down on the UES Haven. The massive construction ship was defenseless, its weapons removed to make room for fabrication equipment and refugee support facilities. "All ships, converge on the enemy flagship," Admiral Rodriguez ordered over the fleet communication channel. "We cannot let that ship reach the Haven." But even as the human fleet raced to intercept the Devourer dreadnought, Sarah could see they wouldn't make it in time. The alien ship was too close, moving too fast, and its shields were absorbing everything the humans could throw at it. That's when she made a decision that would define the rest of her life. "All power to engines," she ordered. "Emergency acceleration. Plot an intercept course with that dreadnought." Commander Brooks turned to stare at her. "Captain, we can't stop a ship that size. Our weapons won't even scratch its hull." Sarah stood up from her command chair and walked to the main view screen, staring at the massive alien vessel that threatened to destroy everything they had fought to protect. "You're right, Brooks. We can't stop it. But we can slow it down long enough for the rest of the fleet to get into position." She turned to face her crew, her voice steady and determined. "And we can show these aliens that humans don't abandon people who need our help, no matter what the cost." The UES Determination streaked through space like a silver arrow, its engines pushed far beyond their safety limits as they raced to intercept the massive Devourer dreadnought. Sarah stood on the bridge, her hands gripping the back of her command chair as she watched the distance counter tick down with terrifying speed. "Captain," Commander Brooks said quietly, "the crew should know what we're doing." Sarah nodded and opened a ship-wide communication channel. Throughout the vessel, her voice carried to every deck, every compartment, every person who had followed her into this impossible situation. "This is the captain. In approximately 3 minutes, we're going to intercept the enemy flagship to prevent it from destroying the refugee construction platform. I won't lie to you about our chances, but I will tell you this: in the past 12 hours, we've witnessed something extraordinary. We've seen our species reach out across the galaxy to help people we've never met, simply because they asked for shelter." She paused, looking around the bridge at faces she had served with for years, people who had become family during their long tours in deep space. "We've seen construction crews work under fire to build homes for strangers, We've seen engineers risk their lives to protect refugees they'll never know personally, and we've seen the greatest fleet humanity has ever assembled. Not to conquer or destroy, but to build and protect and shelter. Today we get to be part of that legacy. The distance counter showed 60 seconds to intercept. I'm proud to serve with all of you, Sarah continued, and I'm proud to be human. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, remember that we chose to be here. We chose to help, and we chose to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. She closed the channel and turned to Torres. Send a message to the Cathara. Tell Elders HFY that humanity keeps its promises. The massive Devourer dreadnought filled their view screen now, its dark hull bristling with weapons that could vaporize their ship with a single blast. But Sarah noticed something else as they approached. The alien vessel was slowing down, turning its attention from the construction platform to the small human ship that dared to challenge it. They're targeting us, reported the tactical officer. Energy buildup suggests they're charging their main weapons. Good, Sarah said grimly. The longer they focus on us, the more time the fleet has to get into position. The Determination opened fire with everything it had, pouring energy into the Devourer's shields with a desperation born of absolute necessity. The alien ship's defensive barriers flared and sparked under the concentrated bombardment, but they held firm. Then something unexpected happened. The Devourer ship spoke. The same grinding voice they had heard earlier filled the bridge, but this time there was something different in its tone. Something that might have been curiosity. Small human ship, you cannot win this battle. Your vessel is insignificant compared to ours. Why do you persist in this futile attack? Sarah looked at the massive, alien vessel on her screen and realized this might be the first time the Devourers had encountered a species that didn't run when faced with impossible odds, because that's what we do, she replied, echoing her earlier words to Elders HFY. We protect people who can't protect themselves, even if it costs us everything. There was a long pause before the alien responded. This is irrational. You gain nothing from this sacrifice. The beings you protect are not of your species. They offer you no strategic advantage. Why would you die for them? Because it's the right thing to do, Sarah said simply. The Devourer ship's weapons powered down slightly, and for a moment, Sarah thought they might actually be getting through to the alien commander. But then sensors detected massive energy signatures throughout the enemy fleet, and she realized the truth. They weren't powering down their weapons. They were powering up something much worse. Captain, the science officer called out urgently, I'm detecting some kind of planetary bombardment weapon charging across their entire fleet. Energy readings are off the charts, and Sarah's blood ran cold. The Devourers were preparing to destroy not just the construction platform, but the entire planet. They would rather commit genocide than allow the humans to save the Cathara refugees. That's when the fourth miracle happened. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Torres shouted, More ships are arriving! But these weren't human vessels. As the new arrivals materialized out of hyperspace, Sarah saw ship designs she had never encountered before. Sleek vessels with organic curves that looked grown rather than built, crystalline ships that seemed to be made of living light, and massive ancient-looking vessels that radiated power like small stars. Incoming transmission on all frequencies, Torres reported, his voice filled with amazement. It's being broadcast by multiple species. The voice that came through the speakers was melodic and alien, but the translation software rendered it in perfect English. To the humans who have shown such courage in defense of the innocent, this is the Galactic Refugee Alliance. We have been monitoring your actions, and we are impressed. We offer our assistance in protecting those who seek shelter. Admiral Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communication system from the Indomitable. Captain Chen, are you seeing this? We're showing over 200 ships from at least a dozen different species. Where did they come from? Before Sarah could answer, another voice joined the conversation. This one was deeper, more ancient, and carried an authority that made the bridge fall silent. I am High Counselor Veltar of the Arksani Empire. For 3,000 years, my people have watched the younger species of this galaxy, waiting to see if any would prove worthy of joining the greater community. Today, humanity has demonstrated something we have rarely seen, the willingness to sacrifice everything for strangers who cannot repay them. The tactical display was now showing an incredible sight. The human fleet, which had seemed so impressive just moments before, was surrounded by vessels from species Sarah had never known existed. The Galactic Refugee Alliance, it seemed, was much larger and more powerful than anyone had imagined. To the Devourers, High Counselor Veltar continued, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, you have terrorized the innocent for the last time. Withdraw from this system immediately, or face the combined might of every species that has chosen to stand with humanity. The response from the Devourer flagship was immediate and predictable. We do not recognize your authority. We will take what is ours by right of conquest. So be it, the High Counselor replied calmly. What followed was not so much a battle as a demonstration. The ships of the Galactic Refugee Alliance moved with a coordination and power that spoke of eons of cooperation. Energy weapons that could crack planets fired in perfect synchronization. Shields that had seemed impenetrable to human weapons crumbled like paper before alien technologies that humanity was only beginning to understand. But it was what happened next that truly showed Sarah the scope of what they had become part of. As the Devourer fleet fell back in disarray, the Refugee Alliance ships didn't pursue them. Instead, they turned their attention to the construction efforts around Kythera Prime. Ships that had been warships moments before transformed into construction vessels. The crystalline beings projected energy fields that accelerated the building process by orders of magnitude. The organic ships released swarms of biomechanical builders that could work in perfect harmony with human engineering crews. Captain, the science officer reported in amazement. The construction rate has increased by over 300%. At this pace, they'll complete the entire orbital ring in less than 6 hours. Sarah sank into her command chair, overwhelmed by what she was witnessing. In less than 24 hours, a simple distress call had sparked the largest rescue operation in galactic history and revealed the existence of an entire alliance of species dedicated to protecting refugees and the innocent. Captain Chen, High Counselor Veltar's voice carried a warmth that Sarah had not expected from such an ancient being. On behalf of the Galactic Refugee Alliance, I formally invite humanity to join our ranks. Your species has demonstrated the qualities we most value: courage, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The invitation from High Counselor Veltar hung in the air like a challenge and a promise combined. Sarah looked around her bridge, seeing the same mixture of awe and uncertainty reflected in every face. They had come here to answer a simple distress call, and now they were being offered membership in a galactic alliance that most humans didn't even know existed. High Counselor, Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system. This is a tremendous honor, but I'm not authorized to make decisions of this magnitude for all of humanity. That would require approval from the Colonial Council and probably the Earth Senate as well. The ancient alien's laughter was like music played on crystal bells. Admiral Rodriguez, with respect, your species has already made its decision. We do not judge civilizations by their words or their governments, but by their actions when faced with impossible choices. Today, humanity chose to risk everything to protect strangers who could offer nothing in return. That tells us everything we need to know. As if to emphasize his point, the construction efforts around Kythera Prime intensified even further. The orbital ring was taking shape with breathtaking speed, its gleaming structure stretching across the star-filled sky like a crown of metal and light. But more impressive than the construction itself was the coordination between dozens of different species, each contributing their unique abilities to the project. Captain, Torres reported, I'm receiving a transmission from the planet. It's Elder HFY, and he wants to speak to you personally. Sarah accepted the transmission, and the Kythera leader's face appeared on her screen. But the creature she saw now was transformed from the desperate refugee who had first pleaded for help. His large eyes shone with something she had never seen there before: hope for the future. Captain Chen, I have lived for many cycles, and I have seen my people driven from world to world by those who would destroy us simply because they could. I had given up hope that there were still good beings in the universe who would risk themselves for strangers. The elderly alien paused, his voice thick with emotion. But today I have watched your species and your new allies build not just shelter for my people, but a new home. A place where we can rebuild our civilization and contribute to this greater community. I do not have words adequate to express our gratitude. Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. Elder HFY, you don't need to thank us. This is what civilized beings do for each other. This is what we should all aspire to be. Perhaps, the Kythera leader replied, but aspiring and achieving are different things. Your species has achieved something remarkable today. You have shown the galaxy that there are still those who will stand between the innocent and those who would harm them, regardless of the cost. Over the next several hours, Sarah watched in amazement as the scope of the rescue operation continued to expand. It wasn't just about building shelter anymore. The various species of the Galactic Refugee Alliance were creating something unprecedented. A completely integrated society where multiple civilizations could coexist and thrive together. The orbital ring wasn't just living space. It included universities where human engineers worked alongside Arxani scientists and Cathara artists. Manufacturing centers where different species shared their technologies to create innovations that none could have achieved alone. Cultural districts where the art, music, and literature of a dozen worlds would blend into something entirely new. Captain, Ensign Martinez reported from the science station, "I'm reading some incredible technological exchanges happening throughout the construction zone. The Alliance species are sharing scientific data that could advance human technology by centuries, but what impressed Sarah most was something she observed in the personal interactions between the various species. There was no sense of hierarchy or superiority. Despite the vast differences in technological advancement, the ancient Arxani treated newly contacted humans as equals. The crystalline beings who could manipulate matter at the molecular level worked alongside Kithara engineers as partners, not as masters instructing servants. High Counselor Veltar, Sarah found herself asking during one of their many conversations, how does this alliance actually work? How do species with such different capabilities and development levels function as equals? The ancient being's response carried the wisdom of millennia. Captain Chen, we learned long ago that technological advancement means nothing without moral development. A species that can destroy worlds but chooses to protect the innocent is more valuable to the galaxy than one that can manipulate stars but cares only for its own advancement." He paused, and Sarah could sense him watching the construction efforts with satisfaction. "Your species demonstrated something today that we have been seeking for centuries. The instinctive understanding that strength exists to protect weakness, not to exploit it. That knowledge makes you more advanced than civilizations that have existed for millions of years." As the orbital ring neared completion, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Commander Thaklan, the Cathara military leader who had provided crucial tactical data during the early battle, transported aboard the Determination to meet with her personally. The alien warrior was taller than Sarah had expected, with the lean build of someone who had spent his life in combat, but his large expressive eyes held the same newfound hope she had seen in Elder HFY. "Captain Chen," he said in his carefully pronounced English, "I wanted to thank you personally for what your species has done, but I also wanted to offer something in return." He handed her a small device that looked like a combination of crystal and metal, pulsing with soft blue light. "This is a Cathara memory core. It contains the complete history of my people, including our technological achievements and cultural knowledge. We would be honored if humanity would accept it as a gift." Sarah accepted the device with reverence, understanding that she was holding the preserved essence of an entire civilization. "Commander, this is incredible, but surely this belongs with your people in their new home." Thakalon smiled, an expression that transformed his angular features. "Captain, the Alliance has taught us something important. Knowledge shared multiplies while knowledge hoarded dies. Our history will live on in the orbital ring, but it will also grow and evolve as it becomes part of humanity's story." He gestured toward the view screen, where the completed orbital ring glowed like a jewel against the darkness of space. "Besides, we are no longer refugees. Thanks to your species and the Alliance, we are pioneers in a new kind of civilization, one where different peoples work together not because they have to, but because they choose to." As the construction project reached its final stages, Sarah found herself on the observation deck of the UES Haven, watching thousands of Cathara shuttles carrying families to their new homes in the orbital ring. Children pressed their faces against the windows of the transports, staring in wonder at the magnificent structure that would be their new world. Admiral Rodriguez joined her at the viewing window, his weathered face reflecting the same amazement she felt. "Captain, I've been in space for 40 years and I've never seen anything like this. We came here to rescue 4 million refugees, and instead we've helped build a new model for how civilizations can coexist." Sarah nodded, watching as human construction crews worked, alongside workers from a dozen different species to put the finishing touches on parks and schools and hospitals that would serve beings they had never met before. Today, Admiral, what happens now? Do we really become part of this alliance? Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment before answering. Captain, I think we already have. The question isn't whether we join them. The question is whether we're ready to accept the responsibilities that come with membership. As if summoned by their conversation, High Counselor Veltar's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All vessels, this is the High Counselor. The Kythera integration project is now complete. 4 million refugees have been provided with new homes, and a new member world has been added to our alliance. But more than that, we have demonstrated once again that the galaxy's greatest strength lies not in its weapons or its technologies, but in its willingness to extend a helping hand to those in need. Sarah felt a surge of pride as she realized what they had accomplished. In less than 48 hours, they had not only saved an entire species from extinction, but had become part of something much larger than themselves. They had joined a community of civilizations dedicated to protecting the innocent and building a better galaxy for all sentient life. 6 months after the Kythera integration project, Sarah stood in the observation lounge of Earth Station 1, watching the most diverse fleet in galactic history prepare for departure. Ships from 47 different species filled the space around Earth's primary orbital facility, their various designs creating a tapestry of alien beauty against the blue marble of humanity's homeworld below. The transformation had been remarkable. What had started as a simple rescue mission had sparked a revolution in human society. The technologies shared by the Galactic Refugee Alliance had advanced human science by centuries almost overnight. Medical techniques that could regenerate entire organs, construction methods that could build habitable worlds in weeks instead of decades, and energy systems that could power entire star systems without depleting a single resource. But the most profound changes had been cultural. The knowledge that humanity was part of a vast community of civilizations dedicated to protecting the innocent had fundamentally altered how humans saw themselves and their place in the universe. Captain Chen, are you ready for this? Sarah turned to see Admiral Rodriguez approaching, wearing the new uniform of the Galactic Refugee Alliance. The insignia on his chest showed the intertwined symbols of dozens of species, with Earth's symbol prominently displayed among them. As ready as anyone can be for their first assignment as an Alliance protector, she replied, adjusting her own new uniform. The rank insignia was different now. She was no longer just a captain in the Earth Navy, but a commander in the Alliance Rapid Response Fleet. Any word on where we're headed? Rodriguez nodded grimly. High Counselor Veltar briefed me an hour ago. There's a species called the Milani in the Vega sector. They've been on the run from something called the Collective for over 2 years. 3 billion refugees scattered across a dozen worlds, and the Collective is closing in. Sarah felt the familiar surge of determination that had driven her to answer the Kythera distress call. What's our fleet composition? 120 ships from 19 different species. Construction vessels, medical ships, defense platforms, and enough firepower to take on anything the Collective might throw at us. Rodriguez smiled. Plus some new allies who are very eager to prove themselves. He gestured toward the viewing window, where Sarah could see a group of sleek ships with distinctive hull markings. The Kythera Expeditionary Force. Commander Thakalon insisted on joining the mission personally. Sarah smiled as she recognized the lead ship of the Kythera squadron. The warrior who had helped them defeat the Devourers had become one of the Alliance's most effective commanders. Combining his species' tactical brilliance with the Alliance's advanced technologies to create strategies that were revolutionizing fleet operations. Captain Chen, incoming transmission from the flagship, reported Lieutenant Torres, who had transferred with her to the new Alliance vessel UES Compassion. The ship was a hybrid of human engineering and Alliance technology, designed specifically for rapid response to refugee crises. The main screen activated to show High Counselor Veltar, but he was not alone. Standing beside the ancient Arxani was Elder Zephi, now wearing the robes of an Alliance counselor. The Kythera leader had become one of the most respected voices in the Alliance government, his experience as a refugee giving him unique insights into the needs of displaced populations. Commander Chen, the High Counselor began, I wanted to speak with you before the fleet departs. This mission will be different from the Kythera rescue. The Collective is not like the Devourers. They do not destroy worlds for conquest or resources. They transform them. converting entire populations into extensions of their collective consciousness. Elder HFY stepped forward, his expression grave. We have been studying the intelligence reports from collective space. They are not evil in the way we understand evil. They genuinely believe they are improving the species they encounter by eliminating individual consciousness and creating perfect unity. In their minds, they are offering salvation. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. An enemy that believed it was helping its victims would be far more dangerous than one motivated by simple greed or aggression. "What's our mission profile?" she asked. "Evacuation and protection," High Counselor Veltar replied. "We will establish safe zones on uninhabited worlds and transport the Milani refugees to safety. But Commander, you should know that some of them may not want to be rescued. The collective's process is gradual, and some populations have partially accepted their transformation." This added a new complexity to the mission that Sarah had not anticipated. "How do you save people who don't believe they need saving?" "High Counselor, what's the Alliance's policy on forced evacuation?" "We do not force anyone to accept our help," Elder HFY answered. "But we will ensure that everyone has the opportunity to choose freely, without coercion or mental manipulation." As the briefing continued, Sarah learned more about the scope of the challenge they faced. The Milani were a diverse species with multiple subspecies spread across dozens of worlds. Some were highly technological, others were agricultural societies, and still others were nomadic traders who lived entirely on massive space habitats. "The good news," High Counselor Veltar continued, "is that we're not going in alone. The Alliance has been preparing for this type of mission since the Cathera rescue. We have mobile cities that can house entire populations, medical facilities that can treat species we've never encountered before, and defensive systems that can protect refugees from any known threat." Admiral Rodriguez leaned forward. "High Counselor, what's the timeline on this operation?" "The Collective's advance forces will reach the first Milani worlds in approximately 10 days. We need to establish contact, assess the situation, and begin evacuations within 72 hours of arrival." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. 3 billion lives depending on their ability to organize the largest evacuation in galactic history, and they had less than 2 weeks to accomplish it. "Commander Chen," Elder HFY said softly, "I know this seems overwhelming. When my people first called for help, we had given up hope that anyone would even hear our plea, much less risk themselves to answer it. But you and your species taught us that there are always those willing to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them." He gestured toward the diverse fleet preparing for departure. "Look at what that single act of courage has created. 19 species working together, sharing their greatest technologies and risking their finest ships and crews, all because they believe in the principle you demonstrated at Cathera Prime." Sarah looked out at the Alliance fleet and felt a surge of pride mixed with humility. Each ship represented thousands of beings who had chosen to dedicate their lives to protecting refugees and building a better galaxy. The crystalline beings who could manipulate matter at the quantum level, working alongside human engineers who specialized in rapid construction. The ancient Arcsani with their vast knowledge, collaborating with young species like humanity, who brought fresh perspectives and unlimited determination. "All ships, this is Alliance Command." High Counselor Veltar's voice echoed through the fleet communication system. "Operation Milani Hope is now authorized. Our mission is clear. Ensure that no being who wishes to remain free is forced into the Collective against their will. We go not as conquerors or saviors, but as friends offering a choice." As the massive fleet began to move, engaging their hyperspace drives in perfect synchronization, Sarah thought about how much had changed since that first desperate transmission from the Kethra. Humanity had gone from being an isolated species on the edge of known space to being integral members of a galactic community dedicated to protecting the innocent. But more than that, they had proven something important about the nature of civilization itself. Strength was not measured by the ability to destroy, but by the willingness to build. True advancement came not from conquering others, but from helping them flourish. As the stars stretched into lines and the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Sarah smiled. They were heading into the unknown once again, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. But this time they were not alone. This time, they carried with them the hopes and support of an entire galaxy of beings who had chosen to stand together against the darkness. The human experiment in galactic citizenship had begun in earnest, and Sarah Chen had the privilege of helping to write the next chapter of that story. In the depths of space, 3 billion Milani refugees waited for salvation they didn't even know was coming. But it was coming, carried by the fastest and most determined rescue fleet in galactic history, led by a species that had learned the most important lesson of all. When someone asks for shelter, you don't just send soldiers, you send builders to construct it, defenders to protect it, and if necessary, people willing to give everything to preserve it. That was what it meant to be human. And now, that was what it meant to be part of something even greater.